Breaking news at 8, a Brockton convenience store up in flames. Firefighters in danger as walls collapse. We are live from the scene.
And troubling new coronavirus records as doctors warn that the worst is still yet to come if changes are not made.
Ready to recount. One state will once again count ballots by hand as President Trump refuses to concede and President-elect Joe Biden makes a presidential pick.
And a paddleboarder swept out to sea, and he's thanking something he was wearing for saving his life.
This is 7 News Today in New England.
8 o'clock on the dot on your Thursday, and starting things off with a live look outside. You can see not too much sunshine out there today. Thanks for starting your day off with us. I'm Juliana Mazza.
And I'm Amanda Crawford. We had a warm start to the day, but things are going to cool down, Chris.
Absolutely, and mild and muggy right now. Mid-60s still in the city of Boston, but we're backtracking into the 50s by lunch, low 50s by dinner time. 65 in Boston, 61 in Worcester. Just beginning to see changes ahead here. Jaffrey, New Hampshire to Springfield, Mass, running between about 57 and 59 degrees, and colder even farther north and west of there. That's the cooler air that's going to be draining on in throughout the day. We also have some scattered light showers and some sprinkles developing across the area. So a lot of clouds today, occasionally some light showers and sprinkles in the forecast as well, especially near and south of the Mass Pike. Even some steadier showers so far this morning right along the south coast. So the bus stop forecast this morning for the kids, low to mid 60s, dropping back into the lower 50s this afternoon. Staying cool right through the weekend, although it does dry out by Saturday. More on that weekend forecast ahead.
And now it's time for Fast Track Traffic. Let's check in with Paula Senni.
Good morning. Yeah, that commute on the Zachem and the Leverett connector pretty consistent this morning. At times you will notice it will be a little bit slow on the Leverett connector, but overall moving pretty nicely this morning. Same thing too goes if you are traveling on the Pike and or out of the city. Looking really good overall. At times it will be a little bit busy, but right now not too bad out there. Kicking things off though in Waltham, that's where we're seeing a crash. This on 128 heading southbound right at the exit to get to exit 29 or 28 rather this morning. So just be prepared for maybe a little bit of a stop and go situation there. The expressway kind of the same as last time. So between Columbia Road and Granite Ave, so where you're going to see most of those delays. South of us, really not seeing anything between 24 and Route 3.
And we're staying on top of breaking news this morning. Fierce flames tearing through a store in Brockton. Walls collapsing as firefighters were battling to try and get that fire under control. All of this happening on North Main Street. That's where we find 7's John Coco with the breaking details and a look at what that building looks like now.
Yeah, well, right now it looks like Brockton firefighters have this situation under control. If you take a look behind me here, you can see this is Rice's Market here in Brockton on North Main Street. When we first got here this morning, this building was engulfed in flames. You had fire coming out of the roof, you had fire coming out of the sides as well. As you can see, that is not the situation that we're dealing with right now. Firefighters hard at work all morning when they first got here at around 4:30, 5 o'clock, dumping water on top of this building. They had to rip some of the sides off as well, trying to get at some of those flames. When firefighters first got here, initially they tried to go inside the building to fight this fire, but because the fire was so heavy, they had to pull everybody out for safety. So firefighters attacked from the outside. They were able to get it under control, and that's where we stand right now. We were able to speak with the man who owns this store, who owns Rice's Market. Here's what he had to say about the fire.
That was devastating. I don't know, what could have caused this. I've been here since 1997. I've been here. I've never had any issues with fire.
So that was the owner of Rice's Market right there. Right now, firefighters have this situation again under control. If you look into the building, you can see all of the damage inside. You can see where that roof sort of collapsed. Firefighters said that was kind of one of the things that made this fire difficult. The multiple ceilings within the building. Because there were multiple ceilings, they were worried about some of those collapsing. So that's why, another reason, I guess, that they had to pull those firefighters out of the building. For now, we're live in Brockton. John Coco, 7 News, Today New England.
And now new record highs in the coronavirus emergency. The U.S. reporting more than 145,000 new COVID-19 cases on Wednesday. That's the highest daily amount since the pandemic started. Hospitalizations also topping a new record with more than 65,000 patients. Here at home, Massachusetts reporting more than 2,500 new cases. That's the highest since April. With almost every state now seeing a surge, state and federal leaders are still grappling with how to control the spread with pandemic fatigue setting in. 7's Chris McKinnon is live in Boston with more this morning. Chris?
Well, you mentioned those 2,500 cases that were reported just yesterday, but here's another startling statistic for you here. Go back to October 12th. That's when hospitalizations were at 317 here in Massachusetts. Jump forward to November 10th. That number goes up to 568, and that is a trend that we're seeing all across the country.
I am really frightened by the spike that we're seeing in cases right now.
A surge in COVID-19 cases across the country. In just the first 10 days of November, the U.S. again seeing a new record high single-day total of cases, with now 9 straight days over 100,000 cases. And it's putting a strain on the country's hospitals.
Remember, our ICU units do not take care of only COVID-19. We have patients who need ICUs. We have patients who need the hospitals. We have cancer. We have diabetes. We have cardiovascular diseases. So that's going to put a lot of pressure on us.
Nearly every state is now seeing a rise in week-to-week infections, with more than 60,000 patients hospitalized with the virus. Texas has reported more cases than the entire country of Mexico.
There's some frustration. I mean, the fact that we are here isn't where anybody wanted to be.
Facilities in North Dakota are full.
They're already, figuring out how to send patients to South Dakota and Montana now.
There was promising news this week about Pfizer's successful vaccine trial, but it could still be months before it's widely available, and medical experts say Americans need to keep protecting themselves by wearing masks and socially distancing.
A vaccine is really important, and the news is very encouraging, but vaccination is not going to be a fairy tale ending to the pandemic.
Now, the White House Coronavirus Task Force is also warning of an accelerating community spread of the virus, so they're urging states to ramp up their testing so that they can catch the coronavirus, and including those asymptomatic cases as well. Live in Boston, Chris McKinnon, 7 News Today in New England.
Moderna says it is ready to report the first results from its vaccine trial. So that means we should know in a few weeks if it works. The Cambridge-based company saying it's finished the phase 3 trial. A board will now start reviewing that data, and results should be revealed by the end of the month. If the vaccine is effective, the FDA could authorize emergency use in December.
Happening today, high school students in Wellesley are returning to full remote learning. Administrators announcing that change because 6 people at the school tested positive for coronavirus this week. They hope in-person classes can resume after Thanksgiving. In Fitchburg, public schools will continue with remote learning until at least early next year. This decision comes after the city's positivity rate jumped to more than 6% over the past 2 weeks.
And in Manchester, New Hampshire, there's worries about travel trouble with some teachers leaving for the holidays. About 10% of teachers have said they are planning to leave the state. That means they will have to quarantine when they get back. So without enough teachers in the classroom, schools could be forced to go fully remote. Parents say they're trying to be understanding.
I'm disappointed that this could be happening. But also at the same time, I understand it. I want to be with my family too, and my extended family, but we're not going to be together.
Teachers will not be the only deciding factor if schools go back to online learning. Currently, COVID-19 cases in the area nearing the threshold for schools to make that move to fully remote learning. Stay with 7 News for the latest in the coronavirus emergency. You can always get updates on air, online, and on the 7 News app.
President-elect Joe Biden choosing his chief of staff, tapping Ron Klain, his longtime advisor, to take the job, a major move forward in his transition of power. Biden is getting his team ready to move into the White House, but President Trump still has not conceded and is pursuing legal action. 7's Brandon Gano live in the newsroom now. Brandon.
That's right. President-elect Joe Biden is up by almost 50,000 votes in Pennsylvania, so that's too wide a gap for a mandatory recount. But in Georgia, where his lead is less than 15,000, the recount has already started. Meanwhile, the president still refuses to concede.
With 70 days until the inauguration, President Trump is continuing to contest the election, telling aides to pursue lawsuits and recounts in key battleground states. Publicly, his advisors are on board.
It's been rigged from the beginning.
Privately, sources telling CNN the president's allies see almost no chance their legal challenges will succeed. Meanwhile, Joe Biden is pushing ahead with his transition, announcing his former chief of staff as Vice President Ron Klain, a Harvard Law grad, will serve as White House chief of staff. The Trump administration is still not allowing the president-elect access to daily intelligence briefings, but Oklahoma Republican Senator James Lankford has said he will intervene if Biden doesn't have access by the end of the week. Meanwhile, election officials across the country say they have found no evidence of fraud or irregularities that could swing the presidential race, including in Pennsylvania, the state that put Biden over the top.
I have seen the most fantastical things on social media, making completely ridiculous allegations that have no basis in fact at all.
Georgia's Secretary of State announced plans for a hand recount where he says Joe Biden leads President Trump by just over 14,000 votes in the state. Secretary Brad Raffensperger says his office will continue to investigate any allegations of voter fraud, but so far hasn't seen anything of the level that could affect the outcome of the race.
We follow the process and we understand the significance of this for not just Georgia, but for every single American. At the end of the day, when we do a hand count, then we can answer the question exactly what was the final margin in this race.
A number of world leaders have already congratulated Biden on his projected victory. In the newsroom, Brandon Gano, 7 News, Today in New England.
More news today. Worcester police investigating an incident on Madison Street. Investigators put up crime scene tape and evidence markers in the parking lot of a shopping center there.
Dangerous moments during an hours-long SWAT standoff in Everett. A man climbing out of a window to try and escape from police. Officers saying it started with a call about a domestic dispute inside this Everett apartment building. The standoff finally coming to an end when a SWAT officer shot the man. Video that you'll see on just one station of that man then being led from the building down to an ambulance. Neighbors say they are still shaken from the ordeal.
I thought he was going to jump. The minute that he went back inside, I was relieved. But then the gunshots, still a little shaken up, but relieved that he's alive.
The man was loaded onto a stretcher and then taken to the hospital. Sources say he did undergo surgery. Police still investigating the incident.
Happening today, the MBTA wants to hear from you about proposed service cuts as it faces a massive budget crisis. Public hearings are being held for feedback from riders on proposed cuts to ferries, bus, and commuter rail lines. Also today, the Boston City Council is holding a hearing to discuss late night service. It'll consider whether the pilot bus program is effective and should become permanent.
Amazon opening up some prime locations right here in Massachusetts. The company says a sorting center is launching in Northborough later this year, and a delivery center will open in East Taunton at the beginning of next year. This fall, Amazon opened facilities in Milford and Northborough. Together, these new centers are expected to create more than 2,000 jobs, which is great right now.
Still to come on Today in New England, strong currents sweeping a local man out to sea. His quick thinking allowed him to use a small gadget to call for help.
And streets turning into rivers as Tropical Storm Eta makes landfall for a second time in Florida. Communities waking up to damage.
And grab those umbrellas before you head out the door. Rain is moving in. Chris will time it out for you.
And we are staying on top of breaking news. A fire tearing through a Brockton market. Walls and a roof collapsing in as firefighters were battling those flames. Stay with the news station. The latest right here.